Jung Hoo Lee is going to have season-ending surgery, which is something that I feared right away when we saw this. But the good news is he's expected to make a full recovery, and possibly a silver lining, I guess, is that it's giving young players opportunities, and they're going to get the rest of the season as an opportunity.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015. I've been hosting this show for over 5 years, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. So check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you are following the show. Today's episode is brought to you in part by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And where we get started, really, I just found this out. I was out and then preparing for this episode, and I just learned basically that Jung Hoo Lee is going to have season-ending surgery, which is just horrible. I mean, it's just, and what's funny is like the question. This is a mailbag edition of the show, and I kind of just want to jump right in, but yeah. So Jung Hoo Lee, he had this very similar surgery in 2018. He's expected to make a full recovery. There's some roster moves that have been made. We'll get into all of that, but this is a mailbag edition of the show, so I do want to just jump in and kind of tie it all in with the questions. Dan says, could this, meaning all the injuries, be a blessing in disguise, so see all of the young outfielders getting serious playing time and inject some youthful excitement and speed on the base paths? If a star also emerges from the Matos, Ramos, Munguia, Bishop group of outfielders, it's a win. I mean, yeah, if a star emerges, it's obviously a win. The bad news is that Jung Hoo Lee is probably the guy who I think was most likely of anybody to be a star among that group. I mean, they did pay him $113 million. But I'm not upset about seeing more playing time from especially Luis Matos to me, but also Heliot Ramos. He has in fact kind of taken this opportunity and run with it. So we're going to look at kind of the performance so far for these guys, and also there's a question, I'm not sure it's one that's in the queue here for today for me to get to, but about some changes we've seen with Luis Matos in the minor leagues. But for Heliot Ramos, I want to start with him. It's a small sample. We are still, it feels like he's been up for a while, but we are talking about 8 games and just 30 plate appearances. We are talking about a strikeout rate of nearly 37%. League average is like 22%. So too many strikeouts. He's also running a batting average on balls in play of 500, which is just unsustainably high. He actually hasn't hit for a lot of power. The isolated power is 069, which is very low. And so when you have a 500 batting average on balls in play, your 310 batting average looks very unsustainable. He also hasn't walked much, so the on-base percentage is just barely higher than the batting average. And if the batting average is going to fall because of the batting average on balls in play being like 200 points above where it's going to end up, then you worry about, okay, what happens when you lose 200 points of batting average, 200 points of on base, and a bunch of slugging as well, with given that he hasn't had a lot of power output. And so I'm not sold on Heliot Ramos. I am I do see the quality of the at bats. Like numbers aside, I do see that he's just had better quality at bats for sure than we've ever seen him have. And so he's getting his opportunity. He's in the lineup again tonight. I'm just confirming that. Yeah, he's in left field batting, what is it, sixth? And Yastrzemski in right and Matos in center. And Farhan Zaidi said Luis Matos is going to get the kind of chance to be that center fielder moving forward. And so that speaks to something because they're not talking about Heliot Ramos going to be that guy to get those reps in center. And so that's worth pointing out. But it's also worth pointing out that Heliot Ramos has made some incredible plays defensively this season. By outs or defensive runs saved, he's already at +5 in 57 innings, which is just exceptionally good. Outs above average, which can be converted to kind of runs above average at +2 in just those 57 outfield innings. And so Heliot Ramos has been impressive, and yeah, getting him more reps is not a bad thing. I do see a lot of comments like they should have just started the season with these guys, or like at what point do they just turn the team over to these guys? I get these comments every single year, and my answer is always the same. Like, people wanted Conforto gone to start the season. Well, he was one of their best players this season so far until he got injured with the little hamstring thing. And so, certainly one of their best hitters. And so, I don't agree that, oh yeah, they should have just started all these young players instead, because you can't. If you got to get rid of Conforto, whereas you could keep Conforto and have these guys available in the minors, and then when there's inevitably an injury or 7, then you go to these young guys, because I said it and it's just true. It's happening now. There will be injuries, and there are, and there have been. And so anyway, that now you have both instead of only having the young guys. And so they'll get plenty of opportunities. And now Jung Hoo Lee is going to be out for the season. And it looks like the 22-year-old Matos, did I say this? Ramos, 24. Matos is going to get that primary look. And what's kind of crazy is I look at the projections for Luis Matos, and we're getting some pretty significantly above average offensive projections for Matos. I guess it's not like pretty significantly, but for a 22-year-old, Steamer has him at a 104 weighted runs created plus, so that's just 4% above average. Zips, 11% above average. ATC, which kind of averages all of the projection systems, at 9% above average, and the BAT and the BAT X have them about league average. And so for all of that at the age of 22, without yet fully kind of establishing himself at the major league level, is super intriguing. And this guy, to me, is a really good prospect. He graduated, according to on Fangraphs, he was their number 12 overall prospect in baseball, not just for the Giants. He was the number 12 overall prospect in baseball when he graduated as a prospect last season, because he got enough playing time. He's no longer a rookie. He played in 76 games last year. But at the age of 21, he just turned 22 in late January. And so I'm super high on Luis Matos. The question has been defense, really. I mean, in center field, he has done -10 defensive runs saved and -8 runs above average. And so that concerns me. And then in the corners, it's been better, but smaller sample size. He's mostly played center field, and so we'll have to continue to see. He's already made a couple of plays that were not too great in center field, but he did make that incredible play robbing the home run in center. So hopefully he can improve. I think the kind of gliding style, we talked about this a lot last year. Kruk and Kipe seem to love it, but to me, just get to the ball. Don't glide. Get there as fast as you can and make the catch. And so yeah, but blessing in disguise, yeah. I mean, we knew it was going to happen. I knew it was going to happen. If you're an everydayer, I said this over and over. Like, people are going to get hurt, And young players are going to get their opportunities, and that's what we're seeing now. Casey Schmidt, by the way, was optioned today, and so he goes down. A little surprised it wasn't Brett Wisely, but Mason Black and Jorge Soler were activated. Keaton Wynn went on the IL, and Casey Schmidt was optioned to get those two players back. So it's good to have Soler back. Mason Black comes into the picture with Keaton Wynn going on the IL. So this is just what happens in a baseball season. Guys get banged up and other guys get opportunities. So coming up in just a minute, we'll get to the next question, which is about Austin Slater and his performance since last June, and if it's time to kind of turn the page on Austin Slater, who is entering his, last year of team control, and so he's a free agent after the season. So we'll get into that in just a minute, and before we do, today's episode is brought to you by Supply House. Get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at supplyhouse.com/T-M and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at supplyhouse.com. All right, as promised, we are going to get into more questions and answers. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers, on Monday, we'll be breaking down this 3-game series. The Rockies are coming into town, winners of 7 straight, which is, they're due for some losses. And so they swept the Padres on the road, which is kind of unbelievable. First time they've done that in like over 10 years, but did it. I mean, they did it. So they come into town red hot, believe it or not, and they're still not a good team. Some of you might be thinking, well, the Giants aren't a good team either. Well, the Giants are better than the Rockies, and so I expect this is still a series that you have the advantage in. Just like I said, when the Reds came in losers of whatever it was, 8 straight, 9 straight, 7, whatever it was, I was like, I don't care. They're still like kind of a dangerous team. And the Rockies come in winners of 7 straight, and I'm like, I don't care. They're still not as good as the Giants, and you should be able to win this series. So, anyway, by the way, are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Do you have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also a reminder, you can catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Giants. So, the next question comes from Matt in Maine, who says, what are Austin Slater's stats since last June? It seems his game has been off since then, and is that a large enough sample size? Heliot Ramos has already matched his hit total this year, and has Ramos played himself to stay on the roster? Well, I did just break down Heliot Ramos's numbers. We are talking about an 8-game sample. So you're asking if Slater's stats from June are a big enough sample. Well, I'm just got to say, 8 games is not a big enough sample for Heliot Ramos. Although I test, let him keep playing, see what he can do, especially while Slater's out for sure. But yeah, so I'll look for you since June. So I'm assuming you mean June 1st and not like since the end of June, like July 1st. But maybe we'll look at both. 2023. For Austin Slater, yeah, I mean, you're right. Overall, even last year since June, he was a tick below average. And then if we look, though, at left-handed pitching, he still hit left-handed pitching pretty well. He didn't dominate them like he normally does. So let's just say against left, because that's really his role, is against left-handed pitching since June. It is 169 plate appearances, which I think is too small of a sample to say, oh yeah, now he's cooked versus left-handed pitching, especially because the numbers are not terrible. They're just not very good. They're just like mediocre. 94 weighted runs created plus, meaning about 6% below average. But if we make it just against all pitching, he's been about 11% below average. So it's definitely like you weight the more recent performance more. But especially when you're looking at platoon splits, like which you didn't ask me to do for what it's worth. But Slater being a platoon player, I really am only I know he's not going to be very good against right-handed pitching. He never really has been. I mean, I'm not saying he can't be, but his role is to hit lefties. But yeah, since June of 2023, he has been below average overall against lefties, but we are talking 169 plate appearances, 87 games. And so, in any given, I would still keep throwing him out there, but at the same time, I get like he's a free agent at the end of the year, and if other guys are playing well, we have reached that point in the season where if you're not playing well and somebody else is, it's time to play the hot hand. I'm not saying you just like DFA Austin Slater all of a sudden, but I am saying like if Ramos is hitting the ball, you don't take him out of the lineup, is my opinion. And so, has Ramos played himself to stay on the roster? I think it's too soon to tell. And if Slater was ready to come back tomorrow, I wouldn't be shocked if they optioned Heliot Ramos. I just don't. I believe in track record, and I don't believe in an 8-game sample, especially when I told you Ramos is striking out 37% of the time. His batting average on balls in play is literally 500. So I don't expect any of that to continue, but I'm not saying he can't be productive. And the projections are for close to league average offensively for Heliot Ramos. But yeah, with Slater being a free agent at the end of the year and Ramos being 24 years old and team control galore, like 6+ years, it is worth thinking about. Like, do you think about making that switch? Because you got to plan for next year too, and then you want to see what you have in Ramos. And so I think that's where we're at. And but like the problem is there's lack of flexibility with Slater. You can't just send him down because he has more than 5 years of service time. And so this is again what I'm talking about. Like, do you just, and in my opinion, no, you don't, cut a player like Slater so that you can play Ramos, and then what happens if Ramos plays poorly or gets hurt? Then you got to go another layer down. Whereas if you option Ramos, you get to keep him in your organization, you play Slater, and then you have kept both players. And I also believe in the track record of an Austin Slater. That's just my opinion. I know a lot of you disagree, but like for real, what happens if you trade or cut Austin Slater and Heliot Ramos falls back to earth and isn't doing well? Then what, right? Then you got to go another layer down. And so there are already so many layers down that I would prefer to take the safe route, and also I trust and believe in the track record of Austin Slater, and I do think that 100 and whatever plate appearances, 87 games is too small of a sample to say, oh yeah, he's cooked. He doesn't hit lefties anymore. All right, next question comes from Trev, who says, who do you think has more upside, Heliot Ramos or Luis Matos? And to me, the answer is Luis Matos, and a lot of this has to do with kind of prospect rankings, but also age, and also, Heliot Ramos has struck out 33% of the time in his major league career, has been about 50% below average in a admittedly very small sample. Again, 42 games, 112 plate appearances, 200 average, 250 on base, 286 slugging. So he's just not performed well when given chances. But Luis Matos, a younger player, has hit 250, which is the same as Heliot Ramos' on base percentage. He's got a 315 on base percentage, which is about league average, and he just hasn't hit for a ton of power. But this year, in a tiny sample of 5 games, he has hit for more power. He's got a home run, and he's got that's it. He just hit the home run and 3 singles. But the home run was kind of crushed, and it was against Yoshinobu Yamamoto, the Dodgers' $300 million pitcher. And so, $325 million pitcher, I should say. And so, to me, it's Matos, and it's a combination of age, prospect evaluation kind of publications, and what I've seen with my own eyes. I think Matos is going to hit. I mean, also Matos' strikeout rate in the major leagues is just 12.3%, which is one of the lowest in the sport. He doesn't really chase. He makes a ton of contact. There's just a lot to like, and so I'm not surprised at all that these projection systems are starting to say, hey, this guy's going to be above average offensively. And when you start to say, okay, you're going to be above average offensively at the age of 22, you start to go, okay, well, what's he going to look like in 3, 4, 5 years? And you get a little bit excited. But can he improve defensively is really the question I have. And as a base runner, he hasn't been the best either. He's a little slower than you would expect. I think people assume he's really fast, but he's kind of not. Let's just check out really quick his baseball savant page and see if we can get some percentiles on defense and stuff. Looks like he doesn't qualify yet for pretty much anything given how little he's played. So he's got a good arm. Arm strength is 87th percentile from last year. Speed just 60th percentile from last year. And overall defense, fielding run value 12th percentile. And so, yeah. And then maximum exit velocity was pretty low too. And so he needed to bulk up, and he did. And that's part of what makes me excited is he gained like almost 15 pounds of muscle. And so I think it's Matos. But I've been impressed. I've definitely been impressed visually just watching Heliot Ramos out there, both defensively and offensively. So I'm excited to see these two guys play moving forward, at least until Austin Slater comes back. We'll see what they do when Austin Slater is ready to come back. And then you've also got Michael Conforto, so there's still a way you could keep them both on the roster for a while. But I think, like Farhan Zaidi said, Matos is the guy that they're viewing as like the solution to replace Jung Hoo Lee, who's out for the season in center field. So anyway, more questions and answers coming up momentarily. We're going to get into who's more likely to be traded of a couple of players if the Giants are out of contention or if their struggles continue into the month of July. 2 outfielders, 2 veteran outfielders. Which one is more likely to be traded? We'll get into it in just a minute. And before we do, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. So I'm looking right now, and we've got in 32 minutes. If you're watching this live, you can check it out. But otherwise, then there's also a game that's not in 32 minutes. Well, actually, this one still is the Knicks at Pacers, and you've got a point spread of +5 for the Knicks, -5 for the Pacers. Money line -198 for the Pacers, +166 for the Knicks. And so again, it's any winning $5 bet. And so I would just look for the most lopsided odds, place my $5 bet on that. And if I win, 150 bonus in bonus bets at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Check it out. Again, FanDuel.com/lockedon, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, as promised, more questions and answers. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers on Monday, breaking down the Giants' 3-game series against the Colorado Rockies at home. This is hopefully a 2 out of 3 at least, and hopefully a sweep. A sweep would go a long way towards getting you back to a position. I mean, there are some questions I don't think we're going to get to, but like, should the Giants just give up on their season right now? Well, if you listened to yesterday's show, which maybe you didn't, and these questions were also asked, to be fair, like several days ago before yesterday's show, they're 1.5 games out of a playoff spot. They're not going to win the West. They never were going to win the West unless some miracle happened. 1.5 games out of a playoff spot, and all you got to do is get in. And if you're pitching well and playing well at the time, it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. Just get in. This is baseball. If you get in, you have a shot. The Diamondbacks were 3 games over. They won 84 games last year and went to the World Series. And 81 wins is 500. They won 84 and they went to the World Series. So all you got to do is get in. Just a reminder, you can catch every pitch of the Giants' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Giants. So, next question comes from Liam, who says, if the team struggles into July, who's a more likely trade candidate, or trade piece, I should say, Mike Yastrzemski or Michael Conforto? And I think that the answer is, let me just verify something really, really quick because I'm almost positive about this. But yeah, I think the answer is a pretty easy Michael Conforto. And the reason being, Michael Conforto's a free agent at the end of the year. And guys who are free agents at the end of the year, like there's no option, there's no anything, it's just pure free agency at the end of the year. Those guys are just always the more likely candidates to be dealt. Guys on expiring contracts. He's also making more money, he's also playing better right now. He's also making more money, which when I say that, I kind of mean, so looking towards next year, Mike Yastrzemski is still under the arbitration process. Next year will be Mike Yastrzemski's last year of arbitration eligibility, meaning after the 2025 season, he will be eligible for free agency if he's not non-tendered, which is a possibility, I suppose. He is making $7.9 million this year versus $18 million for Michael Conforto. So Yaz making less than half as much as Michael Conforto and can be retained next year by the Giants. All they have to do is say, yes, we want to bring you back, we tender you a contract, and then they figure out the amount either by coming to an agreement or potentially going to arbitration. But one way or the other, the Giants could secure his services without having to compete with other teams. And for Conforto, that's not the case. He's a free agent at the end of the year. He could sign anywhere he wants. And so I think the answer is Conforto for all those reasons, probably most importantly because he's playing better, but also the fact that the other things I said I think are almost equally as important. So the next question comes from King of Norway, who says, we're close to 50 games, a true milestone in defining a team's season. At this point, should the focus shift from chasing a wild card berth to developing and assessing our rookies? So we did get to this question. And so they're 45 games in. I say 45 games. Before the season, I say, when people ask, when is it not too small of a sample to take a good hard look at your team? And I say 45 games. And so we know a lot. We've learned a lot about this team. One of the things we've learned right now is that they're really banged up. Another thing we learned, it's surprising, but the pitching overall has been one of the worst in the league in terms of just pure ERA. The offense has actually just been kind of middling and not so much horrible. But when you say, yeah, we're close to 50 games, at this point, should they just stop chasing a wild card and turn their attention to developing and assessing rookies? Like I said, they're 1.5 games out of a playoff spot. And so it'd be different if you were 10 games out of a playoff spot. That would be totally different, or 12 or 13. But they're 1.5 out, meaning you could, by the end of, literally by tomorrow, they could be in a playoff spot. And so I get it, they're 5 games under 500, but, it is the Rockies. The Rockies they did just sweep the Padres on the road, but before that, their road record was like 3-16, and they're not a very good team. It is baseball. Anything could happen. They could come in here, win 3 straight against the Giants, have won 10 in a row, bury the Giants. Anything's possible. But Giants could also go out there and sweep the Rockies. And at that point, the Giants would be 23-25, and they'd probably be within half a game, if not in a playoff position. And so I get it. You don't want to be under 500. You certainly aren't going to like throw a parade for like backing into the playoffs with a sub 500 record. I'm not saying that, but there's almost 75% of the season left, just under. So there's so much baseball left to play. I get it. It is a big milestone, but let's give them those 5 more games and see what they do against the Rockies and the Pirates. They could win all 5. They could potentially, like, the Rockies are a bad team straight up, and they've won 7 straight. And so the Giants last year, they finished 79 wins. They won 10 straight at one point. And so there's no reason the Giants couldn't go on a streak like that of their own and then totally flip this thing around. And so I do, basically, in a nutshell, I'm not trying to like be rude or anything, but I don't think at this point in the season, I definitely don't think you just give up on chasing a wild card berth. I think they've invested so much money. Like, yeah, certain injuries and whatnot create opportunities for young players, so do that and let that happen, and that's what they're doing. But you don't just give up and like say, oh, forget anyone, like just get rid of, like trade everybody and just play only young players. No, to me, you've got to try to compete, but also mix in the young players. That's like, you got to do both. You got to thread the needle. That's kind of where I'm at, and that's what I think they're going to do. So anyway, that's my position. So that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Every dayers on Monday, like I said, breaking down this 3-game series against the Rockies. It is a take advantage of them series, even though the Rockies come in red hot. Let's hope the Giants cool them down. The Rockies had a day off. Maybe the off day slowed them down a little bit. We shall see. It is odd to me that the Rockies are on fire. Like, at some point, they're not going to be on fire anymore. So maybe the Giants catching them at a good time after their hot streak. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, KASPICK. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out so much. So thank you in advance, and thank you to everyone who's done so already. I just realized, by the way, 33 minutes into this episode, as I'm closing, that I did not use my correct microphone, tap, and that I was using my computer microphone this entire time. So I apologize sincerely that you just got bad audio quality. I really apologize. That was a total mistake on my part. Yeah, so that stinks. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the content nonetheless. Normally, this is a much better quality sounding podcast. But anyway, go Giants, big series. Thanks again for listening. You are now Locked On Giants.